The day my wife's first love returned to the country, I saw with my own eyes right in the parking lot. Her and another man locked in a passionate, lingering kiss. But I didn't disturb them, instead quietly retreating back into my car, watching them silently through the windshield. I didn't leave until their heated moment finally ended. I tossed away the carefully prepared bouquet of roses, then headed straight to a law firm, staying there late into the night before returning home. When I pushed open the door, my wife, Anne Lan, was already dressed in a revealing camisole. Her hair was still damp, clearly just fresh from a shower. Seeing me return, she quickly brought out a pot of seafood soup she had prepared in advance. "Honey, why are you back so late?" Zhang Fan, that was her voice, soft in the past, and accusing. When she grumbled like this, I would feel a sweet warmth in my heart. But tonight, I only felt numb. I said nothing, dragging my exhausted body straight into the bathroom to wash up. There, I accidentally caught sight of a piece of lace hanging by the sink, with traces of something still clinging to it. Something every man would recognize. I held it in my hands, stunned, until Enlan rushed into the bathroom and snatched it away from me. In that fleeting moment, I distinctly caught a flash of panic in her eyes. "How dirty! I'll go wash it," she said hastily, tossing it aside, as if terrified I would seize it from her. After showering, I stepped into the bedroom, only to find her giggling foolishly at something on her phone. A bitter smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I pulled out a document and placed it in front of Anne Lan. "Anne Lan, let's get a divorce. I've written down the property division terms in the agreement. Take a look." Before I could finish speaking, Anne Lan scoffed, lifting her eyelids lazily, seeing it was just a contract I handed her. She barely glanced at it, eyes half closed, grabbed the pen and signed her name with a swift, careless stroke. "Next time, if it's just a work contract, just leave it in my study. No need to bring it over to me." After signing, she placed the pen back into the drawer and hurriedly walked out to the balcony to answer a call, as if terrified of missing Shai Hao's voice again. I looked down at the elegant, flowing signature on the divorce papers and felt a faint sting at the corners of my eyes. An 8-year-long relationship. Yet at the end, Anne Lan was still so engrossed in talking with her first love, she hadn't even heard my words clearly. I picked up my phone. "Shen Ming, we're taking over the Su Corporation lawsuit. Send the case files to my email. Then quickly finalize the contract with them." Once everything with Su Corporation was settled, I would finally be able to leave for good. Chen Ming sounded a bit surprised. After all, I had always been known as someone who valued family because Anne Lan was pregnant. I had halted all my work. But now, such a major case. And yet I agreed to take it without hesitation. Chen Ming cautiously reminded me, "Lin Zi, this lawsuit will take at least 4 or 5 years to settle. You'll even have to travel abroad with Su Corporation. Isn't Anne Lan still pregnant? If you leave, can she even handle it?" My voice was cold and detached, devoid of any emotion. "The child is gone. I'm divorced." As soon as those words fell, Chen Ming was so shocked he toppled from his chair. "What?" But just a few days ago, Anne Lan was still asking me for advice about what kind of surprises men liked, talking about blue fireworks and passionate rides in sports cars. Wasn't that all for? A mocking smile tugged at my lips as I forced down the tightness in my throat, making my voice sound calm. It was because Shai Hao returned. The surprises were meant for him to welcome him home. When Anne Lan finished her call and returned, I had already hung up my own phone. She looked tired, but her eyes barely concealed her excitement. Her fingers danced swiftly across the screen, replying to messages, clutching her phone tightly and absent-mindedly ruffling my hair. A rare moment where she spared even a little attention for me. "Still working this late?" A strong, overwhelming scent of men's cologne invaded my senses. I furrowed my brows subtly without saying a word. Work. And Lan answered after a long pause, as if only then remembering, lifting her head to point toward the table. Oh right, I brought you a late night snack. Your favorite wonton soup. Eat it while it's still hot. Only then did I notice the wontons on the table. Bought from my favorite stall near our old university. If it had been before, I would have been moved to tears. But tonight, all I felt was nausea. A bitter, mocking smile pulled at my lips. Before I could leave, and Lan's phone rang again. She quickly picked up, responded a few times, and then suddenly stood up, pulling me toward the balcony. Shai-Hao brought some friends over to discuss work. Some of them are a bit troublesome. You should hide for a while, so there won't be any misunderstandings. Just as she finished speaking, the doorbell rang. Without missing a beat, and Lan locked the balcony door behind me, leaving me dressed in only a thin sweater and severely ill, standing out there in the freezing December wind. And Lan hurried to open the door, ushering Shai-Hao and their old university friends inside. One of them joked about touring the house, and Lan hadn't even responded yet, and Shai-Hao was already enthusiastically leading them around. They even checked the bathroom, amid laughter and teasing from the group. Oh, someone's rekindling an old flame here. Just back in the country and already living together. 151. Let's take a look at the room you to sleep in, one of the friends teased, faced with the friend's blatant coaxing. Shai-Hao's face flushed slightly red, and Lan laughed and was just about to explain, when a sudden noise came from the balcony. The friend looked over and asked softly, "What was that sound?" Only then did Lan remember I was still out on the balcony. She quickly wiped the smile off her face, shook her head, and said, "The wind's strong tonight. Probably knocked over a flower pot. Let's not get distracted, back to business." Cold wind seeped through the gaps in my sweater, biting into my skin. It was a December night, chilling to the bone. I stayed silent, listening to their cheerful voices from outside. As a deep bitterness spread from my heart, I glanced down at the custom bracelet that had fallen because it didn't fit properly. At that moment, strangely, I felt a kind of resignation, as if things were just meant to be this way. Childhood sweetheart loses to faded love. Perhaps that was the best way to describe their relationship. And Lan and I had been childhood sweethearts. Ever since kindergarten, I had always followed behind her, taking on the role of her guardian. Together, we had seen over a dozen seasons pass by. We stayed in the same schools all the way to university, and Lan had always been good to me, too. When a fire broke out, she rushed in without hesitation to drag my smoke-choked body to safety. When I was bullied, she would stand alone with a brick in her hand, shielding me. Knowing I had asthma, she always carried my medication with her, just in case. Seeing the possessiveness in her eyes back then, I truly thought she liked me, even if just a little. So when I turned 18, I made a wish, and took the chance to confess my feelings to her. But instead of the hope I carried, I received a soft, heartbreaking "I'm sorry." She already liked someone else, and then she fled as if escaping. At the time, I thought it was just an excuse to reject me. But not long after we started university, and Lan entered into a relationship with Shai-Hao, the campus heartthrob. A handsome boy and a beautiful girl, their romance shook the entire campus. They became the fairy tale couple everyone envied. Their relationship seemed incredibly stable. During their junior year, and Lan proposed, using every penny she had. She planned a campus proposal for Shai-Hao. Shai-Hao was so moved he forgot all about appearances and kissed her right then and there. Seeing that, I finally decided to let go and prepared to retreat quietly into the role of a friend. But before Shai-Hao graduated, he suddenly broke up with her, claiming he was going abroad. No explanations, no further messages, and Lan sank into a deep sadness. And I stayed by her side for as long as she needed. Until one day, and Lan asked if I still liked her, and whether I was willing to give it a try with her. 3 years of dating, minus 1 years of marriage. I had given her everything I had. I watched as she slowly let go of Shy Hao. I watched as we grew closer, little by little. I watched as Lan truly started to fall in love with me. And then Shy Hao came back. At that time, I had just found out that Lan was pregnant. I had prepared a meal and was on my way, heading to her company to surprise her with lunch. But along the way, a reckless car broke the traffic rules and suddenly crashed into me, throwing me hard onto the ground. With the last of my strength, I opened my eyes, only to see Lan stepping down from that very car. She glanced irritably at the pool of blood where I lay. She was on her phone, making an appointment for an abortion. When she realized I wasn't dead, she impatiently instructed the driver to deal with the situation, then got back into the car and left. I summoned every ounce of strength to call out her name, wanting her to see that the man lying in blood was me. But it was useless. I could only watch, helpless, as her car drove away, leaving behind a cloud of exhaust fumes and a crowd of onlookers. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital, diagnosed with a moderate concussion, a fractured collarbone, and a shattered right hand. After regaining consciousness, I called Lan countless times, but without exception, one of the calls were answered. I kept comforting myself. Maybe she was just too busy. It wasn't intentional, I told myself. The abortion call, I must have heard wrong. But when the TV was turned on by accident, I saw Lan pale and expressionless, her stomach completely flat, abandoning her meeting midway, rushing all the way to the international airport miles away to pick up her first love. I could no longer deceive myself, and Lan had never loved me. To her, I was just a second best choice. It was half a month later before Lan finally returned home. Her eyes were bloodshot, filled with the joy of regaining something she had once lost. The moment she saw me, the lingering affection in her eyes vanished instantly, leaving only a faint trace of guilt. And Lan didn't even glance at my tightly bandaged hand. She just lightly said, "If you're hurt, just rest for a few days." It was that very day that she brought Shy Hao back into our home. I stood there, arms crossed against my chest, as the cold wind burned against my feverish skin. Outside, laughter and conversation filled the air. Barely out of the hospital, standing 2 hours in the freezing wind, I finally collapsed, unable to endure any longer. I blacked out. When I came to again, Lan was sitting by my bedside, seeing me awake. She hurriedly took a thermometer to check my temperature. The fever hadn't gone down. "Are you still feeling terrible?" she asked softly. "Your health is getting worse. Just a bit of cold wind and you're running a high fever. I'll take you to the hospital for a full checkup someday." She carefully fed me the medicine, one spoonful at a time, and Lan carried a towel and walked into the bathroom. When she came out again, she was hiding a used pregnancy test stick in her hand. Her voice carried a faint tension. "Lindsay, did you see anything in the bathroom?" I lazily glanced at her. The pregnancy test left in the bathroom, so that was supposed to be her surprise for me. But after Shy Hao returned, she aborted the child. This surprise was no longer meant to be found. I lowered my gaze to hide the bitterness in my eyes, and answered flatly, "No!" I had no intention of mentioning the child I had just discovered, only to lose. Since we were already divorced and I was about to leave, there was no need to stir up more trouble. Seeing my exhausted appearance, Lan didn't press the matter further. She tossed the pregnancy test into the trash bin, turned, and was about to fetch the towel again. But just as she took a step, her phone rang inside her pocket. "Lanyan, I just finished work. It's so hard to catch a cab. Please come pick me up." Hearing Shy Hao's slightly playful voice, Lan couldn't help but smile. "Send me your location. I'm coming." After hanging up, Lan grabbed her coat from the sofa, turned around and was about to leave. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw me staring at her, mistaking it for jealousy. She softened her voice to coax me patiently. Shai Hao just got back to the country. He's not familiar with things here yet. It's not safe this late at night. I'll go pick him up and be back soon. You still have a fever. Get some rest early. If the fever gets worse, call the family doctor. After speaking, she didn't wait for my reaction, threw on her coat and hurried out the door. And Lan moved quickly. In just half an hour, she had brought Shai Hao back home. She even draped her coat over Shai Hao's shoulders. Behind them, bodyguards followed with large and small bags. And Lan left again briefly, rushing out once more. When she returned, she caught sight of Shai Hao coming out of the kitchen, wearing an apron, carrying a bowl of steaming soup carefully to the dining table. Lanyan, let's eat, he said warmly. We can invite Lin Zi to eat too. All the dishes he ordered are ready today. Just as Shai Hao set the soup down, and Lan hurried over, grabbed his wrist, and immediately saw a red burn blister on his arm. Lanyan, I'm fine, Shai Hao said, trying to comfort her. But without a word, face grim, and Lan dragged him to the kitchen to rinse the burn. Then she pressed him down onto the sofa, pulled out the first aid kit from the room, and carefully applied burn ointment on his wound. I had just walked out of my room, and Lan didn't even glance at me. Only after finishing treating Shai Hao's wound did she finally shift her gaze to me. Lin Zi, Shai Hao isn't your servant. You have no right to demand that he cook for you. Do you even realize he got burned? He's a doctor. An injury to his hand could be extremely dangerous. And Lan stared straight at me, waiting for an explanation. I was burning up with fever, my mind a heavy fog. I had only intended to eat something because my stomach ached from hunger. And now, falsely accused by Lan, my expression darkened. I had been running a fever for 2 days, barely conscious since yesterday. How could I possibly have had the energy to ask him to cook? And Lan, how about asking first before you start accusing me? No matter how much my stomach hurt, I no longer had any appetite. Ignoring Lan's sudden change in expression, ignoring Shai Hao's awkward and helpless gaze, I clutched my stomach and staggered step by step back to my room. The moment I lay down on the bed, my phone suddenly rang. I picked it up to find it was a call from Su Corporation. Mr. Lin, our company has completed the signing of the contract with yours. President Su would like you to process the onboarding within a week. Then complete your visa application and travel abroad with Su Corporation's legal team by the end of the month. Is everything all right on your end? The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. I replied politely, no problem. I'm ready to leave anytime. After a few formal exchanges, I was about to hang up the phone and Lan suddenly appeared at the doorway, her eyes fixed sharply on me. Where are you ready to go? You took another case? I answered lazily with a simple and ended the call, lying back down on the bed again. I could see that Lan was about to say something, but seeing my cold attitude, she choked on her words. The next morning, I was awakened by a heavy burning smell. I thought there was a fire and hurried toward the smoking backyard. There, I saw the servants uprooting the flower beds I had so carefully tended and burning them into ash. What are you doing? My face darkened immediately. Who gave you permission to touch my garden? The servants trembled in fear, quickly stopping their actions. But it was already too late. Even if they stopped now, the flower fields had been utterly destroyed. Lin Zi! It was Lanlin who ordered the burning of the garden for my sake. Don't blame the servants. My profession is a doctor. This morning I accidentally got pricked by a rose thorn. Lanlin was worried about my career being exposed, so she decided to clear out the entire flower bed. But don't worry, I already discussed it with Lanlin, and we're going to replace all the flowers with lavender. It'll be just the same. Lindsay, you're not mad, are you? Only then did I notice Shy House sitting nearby, looking at the smile in his eyes and on his face. I suddenly calmed down. It was obvious. He had done it on purpose, suppressing the surge of disgust rising from deep inside. I curved my lips into a smile. Of course not. As long as you two are happy. The sea of flowers had been a gift from me to Lan. She indeed had the right to dispose of it. Besides, the love was gone. The marriage was over. What did a mere flower field matter anymore? Let Shy How do as he pleased. I turned and went back to my room to start packing. 5 years of marriage. My belongings had long since spread into every corner of this house. Packing was no simple task. To make things easier, I chose to throw things away, finding a box. I stuffed in the engagement photos, the wedding portraits, the couple's items, anything that was related to me. All of it was thrown into the box. Having just recovered from a fever, my body couldn't keep up. My legs were still weak. It took me a full 5 hours to clear out just half of it. After resting for a while, I was about to continue packing Hui. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the wooden carving sitting on the nightstand. That wooden carving had been specially requested for me by Lan. The year we got married, an unexpected flu outbreak hit the city. I had a persistent high fever, and after a few days, I was rushed into the ICU. On the very night I was taken in for emergency treatment, and Lan climbed step by step to a temple and obtained this consecrated wooden carving. Later, I really was saved. And Lan went back to the temple to fulfill her vow, and even ate vegetarian for 3 years. Back then, I had treated that carving like a treasure, wiping it every day, eating to see it before I could sleep peacefully. I stared at the wooden carving, a slight smile tugging at my lips, then tossed it into the box without hesitation, burying it among all the other discarded memories. With 2 large boxes in tow, I dragged them into the backyard. I picked up a still-burning stick from the remains of the flower fire and casually tossed it into the boxes. The dry contents caught fire instantly and were quickly devoured by flames. I stood there motionless, watching with open eyes as everything that had belonged to Lan and me, along with all the memories, was consumed and turned into nothingness. The moment Lan returned home, she was hid by the thick smoke and coughed. At that moment, Shy How, who had been observing everything from upstairs, came down. He spoke in an apologetic tone. Sorry, Lan. Maybe it's because you burned the flower field this morning for my sake. That Lindsay ... got a little upset. He's burned a lot of things too. Maybe I should move out instead. And Lan frowned, seeing me standing by the roaring flames, coldly staring at the raging fire in front of me. A sudden sense of foreboding rose in the air, and Lan didn't even have time to comfort Shy How. She turned and fixed her gaze on the 2 half-burned boxes. Among the scattered ashes, she saw the fallen wooden carving. Her pupils dilated sharply. Panicking, she rushed over, ignoring the searing heat to pick up the carving. Lindsay, why would you burn the wooden carving for no reason? That thing was so important to you. How could you just burn it like that? Her fingertips were scorched, but she didn't even care, only focused on gently brushing the ash off the carving, her movements careful and meticulous, seeing that only a small part of the surface was charred. She secretly let out a breath of relief. I didn't understand her agitation. I merely curved my lips slightly, ignoring her anger. How important could it be? It's just some old stuff. If it's useless, then throw it away. What's so surprising about that? And Lan stood there, stunned. She couldn't believe that those words had come out of my mouth. That wooden carving, I had treasured it for 5 whole years, treating it like a priceless item. How could I be so indifferent now? She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but I turned around directly, leaving her no chance to react. Back in my room, I received a message from Sue Corporation about arranging my visa. I quickly pulled out all the necessary documents from under the nightstand, spreading them out neatly on the bed, then holding up my phone. I took a few photos, front and back, and sent them to the company. What are you taking pictures of these things for? I hadn't even finished organizing my documents when Lan appeared silently at the door, her gaze burning as it locked onto me. I kept my expression calm, skipping over the question casually. Some documents have expired. Do you need something? And Lan frowned, clearly dissatisfied with my indifferent attitude. Tomorrow's my mother's birthday. You need to make time to come with me. She's turning 60 and the celebration's going to be quite grand. Make sure you dress properly. I nodded, but Lan still didn't leave. Suddenly, she pulled out a small square box from her pocket. I had the bracelet fixed, knowing you couldn't wait. I thought I'd put it on for you now. While speaking, she reached out and grabbed my hand, trying to slip the bracelet onto my wrist. But just as her fingers brushed my skin, I quietly pulled my hand back. No need, something that doesn't belong to me. I won't wear it. What do you mean it doesn't belong to you? I had it custom made specifically for our wedding. If it's not yours, whose could it be? And Lan's arm froze midair, her tone growing cold. What exactly are you trying to say? She couldn't understand what had gotten into me these past few days. The bracelet was too large and far too expensive. So you don't accidentally damage it. I'll help you put it away. My expression remained calm and indifferent. I took the bracelet from her and placed it in the drawer along with my documents. Anything else? Hearing me use the word help. And Lan frowned slightly, as if wanting to say something more. But then a call came from the living room, Shai Hao calling her. The words she had wanted to say were immediately forgotten. She hurriedly responded and left the room, not long after Lan had gone. I heard them calling my name. They called several times without getting a response, even sending the housekeeper to knock on my door. Seeing there was no way to avoid it, I had no choice but to slowly walk downstairs. Just as I reached the staircase, I saw Shai Hao trying onto suits, draping them over himself, and Lan sat nearby, smiling softly as she praised him. You look great. This one suits you too. Whichever you want is fine. All of these were picked for you. If you like them, I can arrange regular deliveries for you. When Shai Hao saw me come out, he waved at me excitedly. Lin Z, can you help me pick which suit looks better on me? I'm a doctor. I usually wear casual clothes and hardly ever wear formal suits. This is the first time I'm attending a birthday banquet for Auntie. I'm a little nervous. Don't be. As long as you're there as my mom's family doctor, she be happy. And Lan nodded in agreement, gesturing for me to help him choose. Lin Z, come take a look. Both of them turned their expectant gazes toward me. But I remained unmoved. I don't really know much about suits. Let Lan help you choose. I have no interest in watching my wife and her first love flirt, thinking I might as well go outside for some fresh air. Shai Hao's voice suddenly sounded vulnerable and tentative. Lin Z, did I bother you? Or do you feel like me picking a suit stole something that should have been yours? It's fine. Why don't you pick first? I don't mind if I don't get anything. Are you still upset about yesterday? That misunderstanding where I didn't explain things clearly. I just didn't react fast enough, that's all. Shai Hao's reasonable, flustered demeanor instantly infuriated Lan. She stormed over quickly, grabbing my wrist with a tight grip, her expression dark and cold. Lin Z, what exactly are you trying to do? Last time, it was my fault for misunderstanding you because I panicked. If you want to blame someone, blame me. But why are you taking it out on Shai Hao? Must you ruin the atmosphere before you're satisfied? The air froze instantly. I looked mockingly at the wife I had been married to for 5 years, watching her blindly side with someone else, and laughed in sheer anger. What exactly did I say that made you both think I was throwing a tantrum? I don't know much about suits. Isn't that just a fact? And Lan, have you forgotten that for the past 5 years of marriage, you were always the one helping me pick out my suits? And Lan, emotionally agitated, had no control over her strength. When I finally struggled free from her grip, there were 5 distinct fingernail marks dug into my wrist. I twisted my hand slightly, forcing myself to quickly calm the flicker of emotion inside. I had to stay composed. Can I leave now? Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked straight back to my room. The door slammed shut with a loud bang, and Lan stood there in a daze, staring at my retreating figure, her hand still frozen midair, her chest tightening painfully, making it hard even to breathe. Later that night, Lan returned to the room, curling up and trying to slip into my arms. The next second, I woke up instantly, startled by the touch. I'm still running a fever. Don't get so close. I don't want to infect you. I gently pushed her hands away, half hiding my face under the blanket. You used to take care of me when you caught the flu too. And now you're talking about infection. Isn't it a little too late? Since we were young, whenever you were sick, I was always there. But even so, Lan persisted. She tucked herself firmly into my arms, gently checking the temperature on my forehead. It's still a little high. Go back to sleep. I'll get some alcohol wipes for you. She carefully tucked the blanket around me, tiptoed to the living room to get the medical kit, took out the alcohol, and started wiping me down bit by bit, just like she used to. She did it over and over, until deep into the night, only stopping once she was sure my fever wasn't rising anymore. She breathed a sigh of relief and climbed into bed, gathering my cold hand into her warm palm, and closed her eyes to sleep. As Lan's breathing became steady and soft, my eyelashes trembled slightly in the dark. The next evening, Lan asked me to get ready to head out. I walked unhurriedly to the car. Just as I was about to open the front passenger door, a hand suddenly shot out from behind, pressing down on the handle before I could. Lindsay! I get carsick easily. Can I sit in the front seat instead? Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't feel well when we get there and ruin everyone's mood. I glanced at Lan, who was silently sitting in the driver's seat, and a flash of mockery crossed my eyes. I curled my lips into a faint, almost imperceptible smile, nodded and walked to the back seat. The moment I got into the car, I closed my eyes to sleep. I hadn't rested well last night, and had spent 4 straight hours organizing documents this morning. Now, sleepiness crashed over me like a tide, and Lan kept glancing at the rearview mirror, seeing how pale my face had become. Even Lan couldn't help feeling a little uncomfortable. Finally, when I shifted my position and opened my eyes for a moment, she quickly asked, "Are you still feeling unwell?" I was stunned for a second, then shook my head, and continued trying to catch up on sleep. Meanwhile, Shaihao's eyes kept darting between the two of us, his fingers subtly curling inward. Though a warm, standard smile still lingered on his face, he casually struck up a conversation about the past. And sure enough, Lan's attention was immediately diverted. She stopped glancing at the rearview mirror so frequently. After 2 hours on the road, the 3 of us finally arrived at our destination. We made our way to the banquet hall. The dinner hadn't started yet. This year's banquet was much grander than previous years, and more guests had arrived than ever before. Several familiar faces from our university days also appeared with their families. When they saw us, they waved enthusiastically. I sat quietly on a chair to rest. Shaihao said he wanted to personally wish Lan's mother a happy birthday and asked Lan to go with him for courage. Lan never refused any request from him. The moment he spoke, she immediately stood up, taking him along into the crowd. Once they left, several familiar girls walked past me, whispering nonstop, "Oh my god, they're still in touch?" First love really is the untouchable white moonlight. You can never truly cut ties. Just as their excited whispers faded, The sound of a flowing, harmonious piano melody filled the hall. I looked up and happened to see two striking figures, graceful and elegant, playing the piano side by side. Their posture was poised, the music weaving together perfectly in harmony. In an instant, they captured everyone's attention. Of course it was Lan and Shai Hao. Even after all these years, they still looked so perfect together. And at Lan's mother's birthday banquet, no less. The piece they chose to play was Wedding in the Dream. If anyone said there was nothing between them, I wouldn't believe it. Back when we graduated from university, Shai Hao went abroad, and Lan married that little follower me. At the time, everyone thought she was merely settling, and now, with Shai Hao back, and Lan's eyes never left him. Love and lovelessness, it was crystal clear. Just wait! It won't be long before Lan gets divorced, one of the girls said while the others nudged her, pointing subtly in my direction. But even when pointed at, my heart remained calm, utterly undisturbed, because I agreed with them. Love and lovelessness, it's always obvious. To Lan, I had always been just a compromise, and they were right. We were already divorced. With so many strange, pitying looks cast my way. After wishing Lan's mother a happy birthday, before the banquet even officially began, I picked up my bag and quietly left. Stepping outside the hall, I sent a message to Sue Corporation. I messaged Sue Corporation, I'm heading over now to complete the onboarding. It was 6 o'clock. The timing still worked out. By the time Lan finished playing the piano and returned, I was already long gone. She thought I had just gone to the restroom. But even after waiting half an hour, I never came back. Only then did she notice my bag was missing too. Anxiously, she asked the people around her. It was then she learned I had already left. And Lan pulled out her phone, staring at the silent chat screen, biting her lip as she sent me several messages. After more than 10 minutes without any reply, she grew increasingly agitated. What exactly are you throwing a tantrum about? She stood up, wanting to step outside and call me. But just then, Shai Hao came over and tugged at her hand. Lan, I'm a little overwhelmed. Can you come help me? Shai Hao pointed at her phone and asked, are you busy with something? If not, can you ... And Lan paused for a second, then smiled and tucked her phone away. No, it's nothing. I'll stay with you. Meanwhile, I arrived at Sue Corporation, swiftly completed the onboarding paperwork, and discussed the next steps for the trip abroad. Because time was tight, and the legal team was all present, I printed out the materials I had prepared and reviewed everything with them. The meeting ran longer than expected. By the time I left Sue Corporation, it was already 10 o'clock at night. I hailed a cab home. The moment I opened the door, I was met with Lan's dark and heavy stare. So late, where have you been? She placed a photo onto the table, sliding it in front of me. Her eyes lifted sharply to meet mine. Someone saw you coming out of Sue Corporation. What were you doing there? The air between us grew tense. Meeting a friend, discussing a collaboration. My voice was steady, unaffected, speaking at a calm, deliberate pace. Why wait up for me so late at night? Is there something urgent? I glanced at the photo, a trace of amusement flashing through my eyes. I thought you weren't the type to dig into every little detail like this. You should go to bed early. There's work tomorrow. And Lan was visibly dissatisfied with my perfunctory attitude. Her brows furrowed, lips parting as if to say something. But I had already turned and headed back to my room. I fell into bed and went straight to sleep. Even giving her a chance to speak another word. And Lan stood there staring at my back. Her eyes clouded with complex emotions. Something about me was different. But what exactly had changed? She couldn't figure out, no matter how she thought about it. The shift left her feeling deeply unsettled. I was so exhausted from the day's work that I could barely keep my eyes open. At 3 in the morning, a sharp pain jolted through my right leg. The pain ripped me out of sleep, my body drenched in cold sweat. I couldn't stop trembling. Lindsay, what's wrong? Sleeping beside me, and Lan immediately sensed something was wrong. Seeing me clutching my hand and crying out in pain, she hurriedly lifted the covers to check. Why is there blood? And Lan's face instantly turned pale. This woman, who could remain composed even at the grandest occasions, was now utterly panicked. I'm calling a doctor. I'll call a doctor right now. Lindsay, stay awake. Don't sleep. She made two frantic calls, but no one answered. And Lan cursed under her breath. Useless. Can't find anyone when it really matters. My face was getting paler by the second. She couldn't wait any longer. Grabbing a cloth, she hastily tied it around my hand to barely stem the bleeding. Then she called for the housekeeper to help carry me into the car. And Lan loved peace and quiet. So we lived in a villa in the suburbs. At this hour, getting to the city center would normally take at least 2 hours by car. Throughout the drive, she pressed her lips tightly together, checking the rearview mirror repeatedly to monitor my vitals. Seeing my consciousness fading, my breathing growing shallower, she bit down hard and floored the accelerator, forcing a 2-hour trip down to just half an hour. Doctor, he's allergic to sulfonamides and metronidazole. He has no contagious diseases. Medical history includes mild asthma and chronic hives, and aplastic anemia. At 3 in the morning, he complained of severe hand pain. I noticed there was still blood seeping from the wound. Not until I was wheeled into the emergency room, and after explaining everything in detail, did Lan finally stumble a few steps and collapse into a chair. She lowered her head, only then realizing her collar was soaked in cold sweat. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She waited outside the emergency room for half an hour. Finally, I was wheeled out. Hearing the nurse say my life was no longer in danger, she could finally let out the breath she'd been holding. What's the cause? Why did it suddenly get so serious? The nurse, experienced with many critical cases, answered professionally, though she still couldn't help but sigh a little. The wound from the comminuted fracture was mishandled and got infected. He hasn't been getting enough proper rest. The wound tore open. The fracture happened less than a month ago. He still needs a long recovery period. How could he still be overexerting himself like this? Where are his family members? Why didn't anyone make sure he was properly cared for? After a long silence without any reply, the nurse looked up, only to see Lan's gaze fixed blankly on the surgery room door. She stayed frozen for a long time before snapping out of it. What did you say? You! It was the first time the nurse had seen a family member who, one moment was trembling and worrying, and the next was lost in a daze, staring blankly at other doctors. Her face flushed with anger, and she was about to scold Lan. Suddenly, someone tugged lightly at the nurse's sleeve. Looking down, she saw me weakly shaking my head. It's useless. Maybe I held some weight in Lan's heart, but compared to Shai Hao, that weight was insignificant, not even worth mentioning. Lying on the hospital bed, I followed Lan's gaze and saw Shai Hao walking out of another operating room, pinching the bridge of his nose as he stumbled forward a few steps. He slumped down against the wall, and Lan grabbed me and hastily whispered, "Follow the nurse to your hospital room first. If you feel anything wrong, tell her immediately. I have something to do. I'll be back soon." Before she even finished speaking, she had already rushed off. I watched with my own eyes as Lan pulled Shai Hao into her arms, speaking to him gently, the worrying in her eyes no different from how she had looked at me in the car. A mocking smile tugged at my lips. I shifted my gaze toward the nurse, who seemed hesitant to speak. My smile grew a little more genuine. "Sorry for the trouble," I said politely. It wasn't until dawn that Lan finally returned to the hospital room. While checking on my condition, she also gave Shai Hao gentle instructions over the phone. Don't drive after pulling a night shift. I arranged for a driver to pick you up at the door. The breakfast I gave you earlier. Eat it before you sleep. I won't be coming back today. Lindsay needs to stay in the hospital for observation for a few days. If anything comes up, contact me immediately. Don't try to tough it out. Their not-so-quiet conversation woke me up. I opened my eyes and immediately locked eyes with Lan. She realized she had woken me. Hurriedly said, "Get some more rest," and quickly hung up the call. "How are you feeling? Any better? Does it still hurt?" And Lan held my hand, her eyes full of concern. "You've been coming to the hospital so often lately. Your health is getting worse. You need to schedule a full-body checkup soon. Otherwise, what if you feel sick again one day and I'm not around? I'd be really worried." I didn't reply. I just stared at her without blinking. And Lan thought I wasn't fully awake yet. She smiled and gently smoothed my frown. "Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat?" But she didn't finish her sentence. Her face froze for a split second. I understood immediately. She had forgotten to bring breakfast for me. Forgotten that I was still lying in a hospital bed. All she remembered was to arrange breakfast for Shai Hao, who had stayed up all night. I pretended not to notice. I simply closed my eyes again to sleep. I stayed in the hospital for a full week. During that time, Lan pushed aside all her work to stay by my side and take care of me, except when Shai Hao was on duty and disappeared for a while. Lan was by my side the rest of the time. Everyone praised her, saying I had a wonderful wife. I just listened and smiled faintly, saying nothing. The night before I was discharged, Lan, worried that I was uncomfortable from lying down too long, insisted on helping me out for a walk. We had barely stepped outside the hospital room when she suddenly stopped moving. Her gaze locked onto a figure not far away, deep within her eyes overflowing with heartache. Forgetting entirely that I was still injured, she pulled me along, rushing over to Shai Hao. "Your face is so pale," she said anxiously. "Did you skip breakfast again? Don't make me worrying. I'll call someone to bring food right now. Go wait for me in the lounge." While speaking, Lan pulled out her phone to make a call. Before I could catch my breath, a strange man suddenly burst out of the crowd, clutching a thermos cup tightly in his right hand. Under everyone's shocked gaze, he lunged violently at Shai Hao. "Die! You killed my wife. You tampered with the medication dosage and caused her brain hemorrhage. You're no doctor, you're a murderer. Die, you have to pay with your life." The scene instantly fell into chaos. The crowd, which had been indifferent, scattered in fear. "It wasn't me," Shai Hao shouted. "Stay away from me. It wasn't me." I saw the thermos cup swinging toward Shai Hao's head, and in that split second, Lan pulled Shai Hao into her embrace with such swift reflexes that the hand she had been using to steady me flung me away without warning. Before I could dodge, it was already too late. Bang! The thermos cup slammed directly into my forehead. Blood instantly gushed from the gaping wound, drop after drop, raised to fall onto the ground. The vivid, terrifying red quickly blurred my vision. My pupils trembled violently. "Lindsay! Don't just stand there. Quick, arrest him!" The hospital security guards hurried over. They pinned the crazed man down and dragged him away as he continued shouting and cursing. "Shai Hao! It's all your fault. My wife is dead. You murderer! You'll pay for this. I'll kill you one day, you hear me?" The man's shrill screams echoed through the wide halls of the hospital, sharp and chilling. Lan's face was grim as she pushed Shai Hao away from her and hurried over to me. She quickly knelt down and pulled me into her arms. Shai Hao stood trembling, bursting into tears. Lan ... double quotes he choked. "I didn't kill anyone ... I'm a doctor. I just couldn't save his wife. Why? Why did this happen to me?" Shai Hao's face was deathly pale. Tears welled up in Shai Hao's eyes. His figure swayed, so fragile it seemed a single word might make him collapse. "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Lindsay wouldn't have ended up like this. I don't deserve to be a doctor. I've let down my parents' expectations. The strange looks from the crowd made his back go cold. Shai Hao bit his lip, unwilling to stay any longer, and turned to run out. And Lan tried to stop him, but he was already gone. She stood there, lips pressed tightly together, glancing at my blood-covered head in her arms, then back at Shai Hao's fleeing figure. Her temples throbbed wildly as a nurse rushed over, pushing a hospital bed. Without hesitating any longer, she placed me on the bed, then turned to the arriving bodyguards and said, "Look after Mr. Lin. If anything happens, notify me immediately." Without waiting for a response, she quickly ran after Shai Hao, clutching my bleeding head. I watched Lan's retreating figure through blood-clouded eyes. My chest ached with a deep, dull pain, but there was little surprise left in me. It wasn't the first time I had been abandoned. I had long gotten used to it. Only after Lan's figure disappeared completely did I withdraw my numb gaze, allowing the nurse to wheel me into the emergency room. They hurriedly stopped the bleeding and bandaged my wound. I was then pushed back to my hospital room. Reaching out, I grabbed my fallen phone. "Mr. Lin, the first hearing will be held 1 week from now in the National Court. Please be ready. We will come to pick you up in 2 days." Reading the message clearly, I replied slowly, "Got it." Because of the concussion, my head remained groggy and heavy. I slept all the way until noon the next day, before finally regaining some strength. Gripping the handrail, I struggled to sit up. Only then did I pick up my phone, which had been vibrating nonstop all night. Unlocking the screen, I found it flooded with messages from Lan. "Lindsay, the doctor told me you have a concussion. Are you feeling awful? Eat some breakfast when you wake up. I asked the housekeeper to bring you porridge. Eat something and then get some more rest." Shai Hao was traumatized by what happened yesterday. I'm worried about him. I'm taking him out for a walk. You stay obediently in the hospital. I'll be back soon. Your injuries were because I didn't take enough care of you. I'll make it up to you, okay? Write me a list of anything you want. I'll bring it back for you. When I return, I'll also take you to see your favorite art exhibition. You haven't fully woken up yet? Reply to me when you see this, so I know how you're doing. Otherwise, I'll be worried. Dozens of messages piled up. I didn't bother reading them one by one. I simply scrolled all the way to the bottom, then turned off the phone screen. Lying back down on the bed, frowning slightly, trying to ease the throbbing pain in my head. I hadn't even rested for long when my phone started vibrating again. I didn't want to look at it, but the messages seemed endless, coming in one after another. Annoyed by the noise, I finally picked up my phone again. This time, the harasser was Shai Hao. "Lindsay, are you feeling any better?" Lan saw I was in a bad mood, so she's taking me on a trip to relax. "You were injured to yesterday, so please take good care of yourself." Below these 2 messages were 2 photos attached. Both photos featured Lan and Shai Hao. In one picture, the two leaned closely together, their heads touching, with Lan's eyes full of tenderness and Shai Hao's filled with happiness. They looked like an intimately close couple. In the second photo, they wore very little, their cheeks flushed, bare shoulders showing, soaking together in a hot spring. The ambiguous atmosphere easily stirred the imagination. I gave the images just one glance, then calmly turned off my screen and went back to resting. I stayed quietly in the hospital for 2 more days. On the second night, I ignored the doctor's protests and insisted on being discharged. After leaving the hospital, I reported my address to Sioux Corporation. Then I hailed a taxi back to the inn residence, dragging out the suitcase I had packed long ago. I took one final look at the house, then walked to the front gate and waited. I didn't have to wait long. 30 minutes later, a low-key Land Rover stopped in front of me. "Mr. Lin, we can leave now." The car sped along the highway. 2 hours later, we arrived at the airport. Throughout the journey, Lan called me over a dozen times. Without exception, I didn't answer a single call. When it was time for my flight to board, I powered off my phone, then calmly removed my SIM card and tossed it into a trash bin without a backward glance. I turned and walked away. Meanwhile, Lan sat on the hotel bed, staring at the long streak of green chat messages. Her eyes filled with a complicated mix of emotions. For 2 whole days, she had sent over 100 messages. Not a single one received a reply. She had also called him more than a dozen times, but he hadn't picked up even once. She knew then. Lindsay was truly angry. Before, even when they argued, he never stayed upset for more than a day. And he would always answer the phone eventually, always trying to find a way to talk to her, to coax her. But this was the first time it was different, and Lan ran her hand irritably through her hair, a heavy, inexplicable weight pressing against her chest. She was just about to call Lindsay again, when there was a knock at the door. Lan, it's me! Hearing Shai Hao's voice, and Lan walked over and opened the door. Before the door was even halfway open, Shai Hao had already squeezed himself into the room. He was wearing only a bathrobe, hugging a stack of liquor bottles to his chest. Lan, it's rare for us to get a chance to have fun together. Let's drink, okay? Shai Hao's cheeks were slightly flushed, his eyes glistening suspiciously as if brimming with tears. He had clearly been drinking a lot already. I've been holding it all in for too long lately. Just like back in university. Stay with me tonight, drink with me, talk with me. Being falsely accused of killing someone. It's too much to bear. As he spoke, Shai Hao sat down heavily on the floor, opened a bottle and started chugging straight from it. And Lan looked at Shai Hao, feeling a complicated twist inside. If it had been before, she would have rushed to comfort him without hesitation. But now her mind was filled only with the image of Lindsay, covered in blood as he walked away. There was no room left in her heart for anything else. Still, she didn't want to ruin the mood, so she lightly nodded her head. Shai Hao's smile immediately brightened even more. He rambled on and on, complaining about his grievances, while Lan half listened, her eyes occasionally drifting to her phone, checking if there were any new messages. Lan, stop looking at your phone, Shai Hao pouted. He snatched the device out of her hands. What could possibly be so important? Can't you even relax for a moment? Shai Hao deliberately exaggerated his movements, letting his robe slip a little lower, fueled by alcohol. He leaned closer to Lan, tilting his head up to look at her with a pitiful expression. Shai Hao was handsome, and he knew Lan's greatest weakness had always been his eyes. Back when they were dating, she would often lose herself staring into those eyes. Whenever he showed even a hint of grievance, Lan would become flustered and agree to anything he asked. That trick, even after years abroad, still worked perfectly. Shai Hao was certain that as long as he took the initiative tonight, Lan wouldn't refuse him. Lan, you know how I feel about you, right? I still love you. Even if it's only for a moment, I still want to be close to you. I know you're married, but I can't control how I feel. Tonight, we're both drunk. Just pretend I'm drunk, and give me this chance, okay? Saying that, Shai Hao leaned in to kiss her.